It's great to see everyone out there. Welcome to this regular meeting of the Delray Oaks City Council. With that, can I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Uli,
Present.
Councilmember Halleck,
Present.
Councilmember Shirley. Here. Councilmember Ragsdale Cronin,
Here.
Mayor Donaldson.
Here, please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our next item is public comment. Public comment must deal with matters subject to the jurisdiction of the city and council that are not on the agenda. Anyone wishing to address the city council on matters not appearing on the agenda may do so now. The public may comment on any other matter listed on the agenda at the time the matter is being considered. There'll be a time limit of 3 minutes. No action will be taken. Public comment is.
Hi, my name is Corey Steinmetz, and I'm a Ryan Ranch bicycle commuter. I get to work by taking South Boundary Road. And even as a fairly experienced cyclist, I'm terrified every time I ride to work. I'd like to ask the city to consider taking expedited action to improve the safety of South Boundary Road. The footprint of South Boundary Road is actually wide enough for cars and bikes to coexist, but the road is in poor condition. Vegetation, loose gravel, glass, and even damaged barbed wire fence have protruded into the shoulder where it would be safest for bikes to ride. Because of these obstacles, bikes have to hop from the shoulder into the main lane where there are frequent potholes that could easily catch a bike tire. To make things worse, when heading east towards Ryan Ranch during the fall and spring, the morning sun sits right in driver's eyes during rush hour, making it difficult for drivers to spot cyclists who might be unintentionally weaving towards the center of the road to avoid potholes, vegetation, barbed wire, etc. I know there's been a plan to reconstruct South Boundary Road and its intersection with General Jim Moore with over $8 million in funds acquired at the sunsetting before it. But with legal battles forcing a new alignment and increased costs of design and construction, the project seems to be on indefinite hold. However, the agreement with Forest states that those funds can be used for any portion of the work described in the improvements, which I believe includes bike lanes on South Boundary. Using a portion of that money to clean up obstacles, repave, and stripe South Boundary with bike lanes would resolve the immediate safety hazards. Since the footprint of the road already exists, it wouldn't require the long and expensive design and environmental processes that are currently holding up the project. The money is there and the need is urgent. The road just needs a little work to make it functional until the larger project becomes feasible. Fortag is going to bring more cyclists to this road within the next couple of years. The road needs to be ready for that influx. Please consider releasing a small portion of the city's otherwise stagnant $8 million fund to make South Boundary Road safer. Both drivers and cyclists will thank you. Also, I love the new basketball court. Thank you.
Are there any more public comments? Okay, seeing none, public comment is closed. Our next item is proclamations. We have 3 proclamations that are very meaningful to a couple members of our council. And what I asked was for them to read the proclamations, which they graciously agreed to do. Our first one is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And with that, I will turn it over to Council Member Bill Ragsdale Cronin.
Thank you, Mayor Donaldson. So this is the proclamation, the City of Delray Oaks City Council for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas breast cancer is one of the most commonly diagnosed cancers among women, and whereas Breast Cancer Awareness Month began in 1985 as a partnership between the American Cancer Society and the Imperial Chemical Industries Pharmaceutical, now known as AstraZeneca. And whereas many organizations, including the American Cancer Society, the Susan G. Komen for the Cure Whole Community Events promoting awareness, raising funds for research, and provide progress in how breast cancer is diagnosed and treated. And whereas in 2023, more than 300,000 new cases of breast cancer are expected to be diagnosed. And whereas more than 43,000 women die from breast cancer each year in the United States. And whereas increased breast cancer screening increases early detection, reduces death, increases life expectancy, decreases late-stage cancer diagnoses, and increases 5-year survival rates. And whereas this is an opportunity for the city of Delray Oaks to go pink in October to raise awareness and promote early screening and honor those affected by cancer. Now, therefore, I, Scott Donaldson, Mayor of the City of Delray Oaks, on behalf of the City Council, do recognize October 2023 as National Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
All right, thank you, Bill. I
Thank you.
appreciate that. Our next two proclamations, the LGBTQ+ History Month and Filipino American History Month, will be presented by Councilmember John Bowie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you really for giving me the honor to read the next proclamations. And these next proclamations are really dear and close to my heart. And before I would read the second proclamation for this evening, I would like to request the LGBT individuals who are in the audience and they're together with their family and their allies to please rise and be recognized. The City of Delray Oaks City Council is hereby honoring LGBTQ+ History Month. Whereas the path towards LGBTQ+ equality and liberation has been paved by courageous persons who have fought for the right to love and be loved, and their positive societal contributions of advancing areas of diversity, inclusion, equity, and respect deserve recognition. And whereas LGBTQ+ History Month celebrates and commemorates those who fought for equal rights and services for the LGBTQ+ community, and is a means of educating others, promoting a culture of acceptance and inclusivity, and advancing equality for all. And whereas the City of Delray Oaks is proud of its diverse community, committed to equality for individuals of all sexual orientations, gender identities, and gender expressions, and engages with community partners to provide safe spaces for LGBTQ+ individuals and their families to receive culturally sensitive services. And whereas today, Delray Oaks endeavors to eliminate prejudice wherever it exists, recognize the multitude of identities that make each of us unique individuals, and envision a safe, inclusive world that allows all members of society to live openly and truthfully. Now, therefore, Scott Donaldson, Mayor of the City of Delray Oaks, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2023 as LGBTQ+ History Month, signed this 24th day of October 2023. Thank you so much. And of course, our third proclamation is also very dear to me. And as a fellow Filipino American here, standing in front of you as an immigrant, and I really thank for your trust and your confidence in me. And now, again, I would like my fellow Filipino Americans who are at the audience to please rise and be recognized. proclamation of the City of Delray Oaks City Council hereby honoring Filipino American History Month. Whereas on October 18, 1587, more than a century before the Mayflower crossed the Atlantic Ocean, the first Luzones Indios, as Filipinos were known in those days, arrived in Morro Bay, California, after sailing across the Pacific Ocean as sailors on Spanish galleons. And whereas between 1906 and 1935, the first large wave of Filipino immigration to the United States began, as Filipinos were recruited to work in the agricultural industry, canneries, and on sugarcane plantations. And whereas during World War II, approximately 200,000 Filipino soldiers, including thousands from California, fought under United States command to preserve the liberty of our country and win back the liberty of the Philippines. And whereas between 1941 and 1959, a second wave of Filipino immigration began as nurses, students, fiancés of World War II military personnel, veterans, and many Filipinos who had served in the United States Navy settled in Navy towns, including Alameda, where they created flourishing Filipino-American communities. And whereas in 1965, the third wave of Filipino immigration began after enactment of the Immigration and Nationality Act abolished national origins as the basis for immigration, allowing for much needed Filipino medical professionals to come to the United States. And whereas October was first recognized as Filipino American History Month in California in 2009. During this month, Delray Oaks recognizes the lasting and significant contributions of Filipino Americans to our city and our nation, as educators and artists, politicians and laborers, veterans and judges. Every day, Filipino Americans continue to enrich our cultural, economic, intellectual, social, spiritual, and political lives. And now, therefore, Scott Donaldson, Mayor of the City of Delray Oaks, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim October as Filipino American History Month, signed this 24th day of October, 2023. For my fellow Americans here in the audience, mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Thank you, John. And as all of you know, when there's a celebration to be had, John does it right. And you probably noticed all the food that's out in the foyer. What I would like to do is call for a recess so everyone can go out and enjoy that food before it gets cold. So at this point, we're in recess.
Everybody provided, funds.
We are now.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd like to reconvene this meeting at 6:43. And before we go on to item 5, which is our presentations, I would like to invite Yuri Anderson from Supervisor Askew's office to come up and present a couple of proclamations.
Thank you, Mayor Donaldson. Mayor, Council, wanted to thank you for letting me take a few minutes this evening. We were delighted to receive the invitation from Councilman Dewey to tonight's celebration of the proclamations that you were presenting for Filipino American Month, as well as the LGBTQ+ in the community. And the supervisor's office, my name is Yuri Anderson. I serve as Chief of Staff Supervisor when you would ask you. And our goal in the office, always our mission is to get stuff done with love. And we love to celebrate our communities when they are also doing those same things. So we wanted to come out tonight. I have a couple of certificates of recognition for the city. One, recognizing your outstanding efforts to promote quality and inclusivity for the LGBTQ community. Your commitment to creating a welcoming and supportive environment for all residents is truly inspiring. And then we also wanted to recognize you for proudly recognizing the Filipino American community for their significant contributions to the city's history and culture. We just love to see our cities taking time to celebrate the people within them, to recognize and celebrate diversity, to say that it's welcomed. And so the supervisor wanted to say thank you to this council for doing that. And we applaud your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
Picture of it.
Picture.
Thank you. So I'll leave this to Karen.
Okay, so I'll move on to our next item, which is, we have two presentations. The first one is from United Way, Monterey County. And for that presentation, we have Katie Castagna. Could you please come on up, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Donaldson and members of the city council. Thank you so much for the invitation to come speak to you today. I'm Katie Castagna. I'm the president and CEO for United Way Monterey County. And we have a number of programs and services county-wide. Tonight, I would just like to briefly provide some updates on our 211 program services. And before I get to that, though, I want to just frame what United Way is all about. And if I could have the next slide. Thank you. So our focus is on family financial stability, and we do that through investments and programs and services in the areas of early care and education, making sure that kids are well cared for and ready for school, affordable housing, and then asset building, which we define as financial literacy and free tax preparation, making sure people have access to financial supports and benefits. And all of these are really connected at the center of sort of our wheel in the graphic we have by information and referrals. So you think about how do people access these great services. There's a lot of wonderful services throughout Monterey County. And one way that United Way supports that is through our 211 information and referral service. Everybody knows about 911. People are still learning about 211. So 211 is for non-emergency health and human service referrals. 211 is actually a national program. In California, it's organized county by county, and in many counties, the local United Way is the operator of 211. United Way Monterey County operates it here in our community, and we've done that since 2009. So we continue to grow and expand the use of 211, and I want to share with you a little refresher, both for your own information and also to make sure that the residents in your community are familiar with it. So it is free to the caller. It's information and referral. It's a telephone number somebody can call and talk to a live operator. Sometimes you need help, but you don't know what agency or organization provides that kind of service. And so that's really the function of 211, is to be able to provide those resources and maintain an up-to-date database of resources, all the different programs and services that are in our community. So the traditional way to access 211 is by dialing the number and talking to a live person. People can also text to 211 and have a two-way text conversation. We also have resources available online at 211montereycounty.org. If you could back up a minute. I want to just talk through the process for what happens when someone dials 211. The telephone system recognizes where you're from. So even if you, or where you're calling from. So even if you have a cell phone number with a different area code, it will recognize that you're within the boundaries of Monterey County. And we have a call center with trained call specialists who who answer the phone, have a conversation, and identify the needs and match those needs with the resources that we have in our database. The numbers, hours of operation, eligibility, that kind of information is shared with the resident. And then we also have an opportunity to text the person with hyperlinks to those lists of resources. It also, and then it's really up to the resident to call 211 after they call 211, to call the referrals and follow up with their particular needs. This also is a centralized database, so the idea of all of the agencies and services in the community, keeping their information updated in 211, avoids the problem of the old yellow pages or any kind of directory. We've all had those resource directories that are wonderful in print, but they're obsolete as soon as they're printed. So we continually update those resources. So that's a little bit about how the process works. And then we can move on, thank you. So just a little bit of sharing with you about how many calls we get. Last year, we had about 15,000 calls, 15,198 contacts. Most of those were by phone, but we did have 324 two-way texts. So it's interesting that is utilized, but it hasn't overcome the phone service, and people do still like talking to a live operator. You can see in our graphic, this is sort of a month by month. So you see there is an ebb and flow, and in the middle of the year, you back up, thank you. You'll see that was January of 2023. That's when we had the beginning of the winter storms, and all of the destruction that was caused by that. 211 was very active during that period of time. And in fact, we worked closely with the County Department of Emergency Management, and we were embedded in that office and made sure that we had real-time information on evacuation, maps, centers, housing and shelter, and information about road closures and so forth. So we did see a spike in calls then, and we typically do during natural disasters. And it's been a great tool for the community when we're dealing with a crisis like that as well. But in general, 211, when we're not experiencing a crisis like that, we're really addressing and supporting the everyday crises that people have when they call and they have need for affordable housing, and they're looking for where is that rental assistance, and then there's little pockets of it. We know also that there's not enough services to address every need, but the needs that we are able to refer people to, everything from immigration assistance, food supports, of course, the free tax prep program, and many others. We list over 2,000 resources, different programs, and representing about 800 agencies. And they're local resources, but they're also state and federal as well. So we're able to keep up those resources in collaboration with other 211s to make sure that the resources all the way up to the national level are available for people to find out about. So the other thing that I wanted to share with you on the data is really on the graphics on the right. And if you back up just a minute, we're still on the countywide. So this is countywide for Monterey. Most of our calls, you'll see 61% are for basic needs. So it's that housing, food, and utilities and transportation. We do categorize the different types of needs. And so you'll see we can track what people are calling about healthcare, employment, mental health, and substance abuse, and so forth. So it is a great reflection of the needs of our community, and then we can drill down very specifically into where there's gaps and then provide that data for policy making and so forth. And now we can move to the next slide. So then we can also look at where people are calling from, or we ask the caller, where are you calling from? Primarily because we want to make sure we match them with the closest resource. And we do collect other demographic data, but this is a snapshot of the Delray Oaks call data. So these are the contacts we had from Delray Oaks last year. And so that was a total of 20 phone calls and 2 texts, and we made 38 referrals to those people that inquired for services. So And you can see even more than the countywide data, the vast majority were asking for basic needs supports. Moving forward, I mentioned the winter storms, and the support we provide countywide. We provided information for 1,166 callers during that winter storm period, specific to that crisis. And we also actually throughout the state have a program working with PG&E to support people when there are power outages and people that have access and functional needs who are dependent on power. There's a program where we're identifying those folks and either providing equipment or having call lists so we know who's affected when there might be, in particular, a public safety power shutoff when the power company is starting to have more planned outages and making sure that it doesn't have any adverse impact on individual health and well-being. And so finally, you might ask, how is 2-in-1 funded? And here in Monterey County, we've been very fortunate to have a broad collaboration of funding support with starting with our local foundations, our county government, and then most of our local cities do support 2-in-1. And I want to thank you, Delray Oaks, for being one of those cities to support 2-in-1 and ensuring that it's here as part of our public infrastructure and a service to the residents. So want to thank you for your support and also just help ask you to share the word, make sure people know it's out there and encourage them to use the service. Happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you. So I'll start with Commissioner Shirley. Any questions, comments?
Katie, thank you so much for your presentation. It's always so good to hear this information. I was curious, you provide so much information, all these resources. How do people know that you have, like, I think, when I think of 2-in-1, I guess there's just a little bit of information I think of, but like, you know, what you provide is wide. What are your ways of getting that out besides coming to talk to council meetings? How do people know to call you, I guess?
Okay, so on the consumer side,
Yes.
so when we first launched it, we in fact, our MST friends are here. We were on back to buses. So we did some traditional marketing in that regard. We really don't have any paid advertising now to speak of. We've had a lot of public service announcements and actually during the pandemic, the county was as part of their COVID relief and outreach and really the messaging around immunizations. We partnered with them. We actually made appointments for people. Remember when it was hard to get a vaccine appointment? And so the county was running PSAs saying, call 2-in-1 and find out how to do this. We really market also to agencies, really who are serving clients. So even if they have a client in for one kind of need, they know that they might need other support. So within the service delivery community, we have, marketing and messaging that's very specific. And then that also combined with the need to have everybody update their information. So we have an annual update cycle to make sure it's fresh. And then we can real time, add or modify any programs that are listed.
Well, great.
But word of mouth, I think ultimately is the best way to get it out there.
Yeah, well, thank you for this reminder. I will spread the word.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No questions really, just to thank you for your very informative presentation. I have a much broader understanding of the services provided now. That is all I have. Thank you. I oftentimes encounter people that need help and I will simply tell them by word of mouth, perhaps 2-in-1 is an avenue by which you can find some remedy for it.
Thank you.
So thank you for visiting my instance.
Councilmember Ely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Katie, thank you so much for coming here. And I would admit, I didn't even know what 2-in-1 was, so until now that you presented, and I'm inspired to really bring this to my community and to our community here in Delray Oaks. And I just want an assistance, if you have flyers that I can post on my Facebook account or on Nextdoor, and that would be great, you know, so.
Sure,
So that I can disseminate this information.
We do have a lot of digital
Okay.
assets, so I
Yes.
can send that to Karen. Okay,
Okay,
great, yeah,
thank
thank you.
you.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right, Councilmember Bill.
Yes, thank you. And along with Councilmember Hui, I didn't know 211 exists because when you first said 211, I'm like, what's that? But one couple things, thank you for the presentation. It certainly brought some stuff forefront that I think the community needs to know about. And I'm curious if we could include this presentation in the minutes that literally go out to most everybody in the city. And also maybe we could do some kind of a blurb in the Acorn, which is our kind of a local.
Oh, yeah, we'd be happy to.
You know, a one pager or even a half page kind of a thing, so people, it gets out in front of them, it gets, you know, the Acorn goes to every single resident, and that would be a good way to get that out there, so hopefully we could do something like that. But yeah, I mean, getting the word out is great, and it was pretty amazing that many people in Del Rio needed some kind of assistance during that time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and we can also consider the city website as well, and maybe putting something on there to help get the word out. Katie, thank you so much for your presentation. The one question I had was regarding Del Rio, and I guess it's everyone in Monterey County, do you have the ability to circle back with those individuals to make sure that they got what they needed? Or is it kind of like you refer them and then it's on their own to go and make sure that they get what they need?
We do some follow-ups, but it's really a small percentage that we do, because of course, we want to make sure they get the service, but it's really almost a quality check that we do, so maybe a couple percent of the calls get a follow-up. Once in a while, there's a particularly concerning call, or it's obvious there needs to be more engagement, and those will definitely rise to the top for follow-ups. And that in social services is really the $1 million question: does the person get the help? United Way has developed a system to do what we call closed loop referrals, so that we actually can track. I'm referring to you as to your agency, and will your agency then know that this client is coming? And then you will be able to serve them because I know that they're eligible for your service. So we're starting to do that with an electronic referral system that's built kind of on top of the 211 resource database. But that's and that's growing really around specific types of support. We have one around mental health now, for example, and so we're starting to track those referrals around that.
Yeah, because that would be my biggest concern, that, you know, the citizens here in Del Rio, after they reached out, that they did in fact get the help that they needed. And it sounds like to a pretty high degree of confidence, you feel pretty good about that.
Well, we know that we're getting good resource information, but the person does need, it's really equipping them to go forward. So there's definitely encouragement needed for people to then take the next step and follow up. And that's why we take it very seriously to be sure that we have the right phone numbers and, you know, that we're tracking programs, because there's always change. But it's really empowering people to then take the next step themselves.
Okay, all right, thank you. What I'd like to do now is open it up to the public. If anyone in the public has any questions or comments for Katie, this is your opportunity.
I have a comment.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I had heard of this before, but I had no idea this was so broad. And it opened up my eyes to, you know, resources that we do have. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Say hello to Tom, your brother.
Oh, I shall.
I worked with him, God knows how many years ago, but I worked with him.
Great, and your name?
Mike O'Brien.
Michael Bryan. Okay, thank you. I love the small community.
Okay, any other public comments or questions? All right, Katie, thank you so much.
Thank you for the time and your support and interest, and I'll follow up with those resources. Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have a presentation from MST. We have here a very special guest, our CEO. Yeah, I would just say he's one of Del Rio's finest. Carlos Door.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, staff, members of the public, Carlos Burke, CEO of the Monterey City Transit District. Short time, 23-year resident of Delray Oaks. So I'm still a newbie. We have a presentation here that is coming up, great. And if we move to the next slide. Just a little bit about MST. We are a special district that was formed in 2010, representing all of the cities in Monterey County and a representative from the Board of Supervisors. We are ably represented here in Delray Oaks by Ms. Shirley on your council and her backup, Mr. Halleck. Do a great job of staying informed and interested and participating on our board. MST, the district, superseded the Joint Powers Agency that was first created, its first initial form in 1973, 50 years ago. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary of public transit in Monterey County this year. So next slide. You'll see our missions, vision, and values. There we go.
It's not in the,
Let's see.
not presentation note, but it's. Not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So, leading to MST, our mission, vision, and values. Our mission, as adopted by the board of directors, is advocating and delivering quality public transportation as a leader in our community and in our industry. Why? Why do we exist? We went through a process right after and during COVID. We were challenged with this very question. We saw that that there were many in the community that needed services, whether it was transit or other services, didn't have access to them, and others in the community that had an abundance of services that may not have needed them as others. And that forced MST to consider what we were doing and why do we exist, because frankly, for the last 49 years, we've been really interested in really focusing on ridership and didn't care where it came from or how it came. We just wanted to see full buses. This made us rethink ourselves and how we deploy those resources, and is there a better job of putting resources perhaps where they're most needed by people who need the services more than perhaps others. And so we came up with a vision of connecting communities, creating opportunity, and being kind of, and that's the lens through which we start to look at things. We're not accomplishing one, two, or all of those things. We don't do it. How do we work? What is our culture at MST? We focus on safety, friendliness, dependability, diversity, and achievement. And in our board reports, we call that people, planet, and performance. And so those are the things we focus on. We're going to talk a little bit about that now. Next slide. Boom. So in 2023, MST had 2.2 million passenger boardings. That means, someone got either 2.2 million people got on the board once, or one person wrote 2.2 million times. We don't know. We know that 2.2 million times people walked on board the bus because we have infrared scanners that scan someone coming on board the bus, and then we can tell when they're leaving the bus. Back slide, please. That was a nearly 20% increase over the previous year, so we are rebounding from COVID. 76% of the population that rides MST buses are historically underrepresented non-white minorities. 77% have annual household incomes of under $40,000 per year. So these are folks that have very limited means. 25% of trips start within what in California has defined as a disadvantaged community. That means persons of low income with also other socioeconomic issues within that community. It's more than low income. It's access to healthcare, it's pollution factors and other things. 6% of our county lives in a state designated disadvantaged community, yet 25% of our trips riders start within those communities. So we are serving some of those most disadvantaged people. 20% of the people who ride our buses have a disability that causes them to depend on others for mobility. Next slide, please. So where are they going? Well, same place where you went today. Some of them are going to work, they're going to school, they're going to shopping, visit relatives, get healthcare, recreation. So folks who are riding the bus, they don't use the bus for any one thing. They use the bus for every transportation need in their life, and they have many needs, just as we all do. Next slide. So, why? Well, mostly because they don't have a car, or they're unable to drive due to disability of some sort. You know, some just think it's cheaper than driving, but really it's most folks just don't have a car available to them. Many have a car in the household, but one spouse may be using that car for an ag job that MST doesn't serve, and another spouse, the other spouse may be working in hospitality. The kids may be going to college or to primary school on the bus. That's kind of what we see. Next slide, please. What would happen if MST wasn't here? What we call a day without transit? 20% would not be able to go to their job or to their healthcare or to their school. So that's 1 out of 5. That would be devastating to those folks. 17% would find a way to walk, bike, or take a scooter. But what I think is really important is the 60% that would find another way with their own car, someone else's car, or a taxi, Uber, or Lyft. Could you imagine 60% of that 2.2 million, another million trips on our already very, very congested roads? So we play a role in reducing traffic congestion as well, very important. Next slide, please. Delray Oaks ridership, you know, smaller community, so, you know, you don't have the highest, you don't have the lowest ridership, but you certainly don't have the highest. Between January and September, we're counting, starting with the implementation of our new bus network. There were almost 6,500 fixed route boardings and nearly 100 MST rides trips. So take that out to the end of the year, we're anticipating about 9,000 trips in Delray Oaks on our services. The highest routes is Fremont Portola. Many people don't realize that's even in Delray Oaks, but right before you get to right before you get to the Burger King, in the sign that says "Welcome to Seaside," that's actually Delray Oaks, and that is your busiest stop. We do have some ridership right across the way here by the Frog Pond as well. Next slide. So when there's a map, you see the big blue circle there. You see a few dots along Canyon Delray. That's where the other ridership is. Next slide. And should be no surprise that people are getting off the bus where they're getting on the bus. Next slide. My planning staff thought it was important for everybody to see that. And I thought, well, aren't the maps just a little the same? So as we talk about planet, 100% of our heavy duty fleet, big buses, are fueled by 100% renewable biofuel or renewable electricity. Back slide, please. And we have another dozen zero emission buses will be on order by the end of the year. We're looking at November for board approval for that. So let you know now. So we have removed the equivalent of 110,000 single occupancy vehicle trips per month off of the roads. We also reduce greenhouse gas emissions each month by the equivalent of what 220 acres of forest sequesters. That's the same equivalent of greenhouse gas savings that we're sequestering or not allowing to emit. And interesting fact that in this most recent passenger survey, nearly 75% of our very low income passengers think that reducing greenhouse gases is important. And I've been for decades personally have been told issues of the environment are a rich person's issue. Poor working class people don't care about the environment. They just need to get to work and back. This data, at least in Monterey County, shows that's not true. Our very low income working class people who use MST, the vast majority of them are very concerned about reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide. Speaking of that, that's what one of our electric buses look like. Battery electric buses. If you see one of those that looks like that, you know it's battery electric. So we have come up with a different design for the battery electric buses. So when you see one, you'll know. Next slide. So about MST, we cover 159 square mile service area from Paso Robles to Watsonville, all throughout Monterey County. Watsonville and Santa Cruz County, Paso Robles and San Luis Obispo County, and starting next Monday, returning to Santa Clara County service to Gilroy. We'll start 4 weekday trips per day. So that's a service area that is equivalent to 1/5 the coast of California is served by MST. It's basically Washington DC to Harrisburg, or Tampa to Orlando to St. Petersburg, or from Houston to the other side of Houston. So we also surveyed our 409 residents who don't use transit. And we're pleased to hear that 95% of them feel that MST services are valuable to the community, even though they don't use the first. Nearly 90% think it's important that MST be funded. 80%, 4 out of 5, think that we should see greater levels of funding for transit over the next 5 years. So those are good indicators that people don't use us, support us, and think that we're worthy of more funding. Next slide. Where does our money come from currently? Most of it comes from state sales tax. A good chunk of it comes from federal fuel excise tax, 18.4 cents per gallon on a gallon of gas. That was 18.4 cents in 1991. That's still 18 cents in 2023. State fuels tax and Measure Q make up most of our funding sources. Next slide. Where do we spend all that money? Woo, wait a second. Wow. I just back. It's out of here. There we go. Where do we spend all that money? Mostly on labor, wages and benefits. About 32 million of that, 58 million, a little over half. The purchase transportation, that 20%, 11 million, we contract out in order to control our costs. We contract out, so the little buses are run by private contractors that we go out to bid. Big buses are operated by MST directly. Fuel makes up about 10% of that budget. Next slide. I mentioned MST Measure Q as being a major source of funding for us. To remind you all what Measure Q is, was the first countywide sales tax for anything in Monterey County that we won in 2004. Was one with over 72% of the vote. So why don't we support it? It's a 15-year, 1/8 of 1% sales tax that only supports transportation projects for seniors, persons with disabilities, and veterans. So our MST rides, ADA services, senior shuttle routes, taxi vouchers, travel training, navigators who will actually go with a person who needs help with groceries and will take them through the door and help them with their total trip is provided by that. And then in rural areas outside of the 3/4 mile corridor that MST operates in, we will reimburse someone who has a friend or a relative, we'll take them to where they need to go. We'll reimburse them mileage for those trips in the rural areas. And we have people out in Parkfield are taking advantage of that program. Who's people who need to get into town who don't have mobility, we'll have someone who will drive them in and we'll reimburse them for their mileage. Next slide. Measure X is another funding source for capital projects for MST. Measure X was a sales tax measure that TAMC, the regional planning agency, passed, and most of that went to your local streets and roads programs and other congestion projects, bike trails, very important here in Del Reyes. I also ride my bike up to Ryan Ridge, and it is a harrowing experience. I look forward to having a safer bike ride someday. About 7% of that goes to MST for our Highway 1 bus rapid transit project we call SURF, also for our transit centers and facilities in the Salinas Valley. Next slide. Recently, we were recognized for our COVID response and recovery nationally through the state. A lot of people liked how we were able to help our community recover during those difficult times. We're put that behind us. We built a new operations facility and maintenance facility in King City, using some of that Measure X money we just talked about. We implemented partnerships with Cal State University, Monterey Bay, Hartnell College, Monterey Peninsula College, for past partnerships. All those students ride for free at CSULV, faculty and staff also. So we base fees from them based on their enrollment, and we update that every month. So that's a very valuable program. We were the first in the country to implement a contactless credit debit wallet fare payments program. So use that same card that you used in your wallet. to pay for transit. Don't use a piece of plastic to buy another piece of plastic that you can only use to buy transit. So it seems like a radical concept. It seems simple, but it was, we were the first to pull it off. So there are others now that are following our lead. We implemented a van pool program where we provide $450 a month to eligible van pools that are coming to work in and out of Monterey County. We have people all the way from the San Jose and San Francisco Bay Area who work at the DLI. Come travel in van pools, and we help subsidize that as well. We implemented our Better Bus Network this past December. Next slide, please. What is there's our contactless credit card system. So any card enabled device, and we've had many people using it. Click. And next slide. There we go. See how it works there? Bing, that's how fast you can board the bus. No putting the dollar in, there you go. Next slide. So the Better Bus Network, I just mentioned that. That was a reallocation of services, as I mentioned. COVID response was to reallocate services to where they're needed the most. So now we have 40% of our services in Monterey, 40% in Salinas, 20% regionally. Focusing on highest demand, reducing routes with more direct service, average 30-minute decrease in travel time. And we increased transit near residents and jobs, and lowered our fares to $2 for 2 hours. Next slide. So what does the future hold? Click again. Let's ask Madam Transit. She's over there on Freeman over there by Sonoma. Next slide. So we're in the process of implementing our Surf Busway and Bus Rapid Transit project. We're at 95% design. We've got all our environmental cleared. We're just looking for permits from the city of Seaside, city of Marina, and the California Coastal Commission. And that's all going actually better than I could expect. So we're moving along there. We're in the process of looking at a new facility at Salinas Operations and Maintenance Facility. Our current facility is 40 years old in Salinas. Did not contemplate the use of hydrogen and battery electric vehicles. So we need a new facility to really have that infrastructure in place. We're looking at bus rapid transit like the Jazz and the Surf to occur in the East Alisal corridor for the future. We need to study that. And we have $120 million unfunded mandate from the state of California to go to 100% zero emission bus fleet, battery electric or hydrogen fuel cell. So we need to buy the buses, we need to get the charging stations, we need to get the fueling stations in place. So we're working on that. Next. So I'll talk a little bit about the Surf. Next slide. The Surf is a 6.5 mile busway between Marina and Sand City, within 100% within the rail right of way along Highway 1. It will reduce traffic congestion, provide reliable transit service, and you won't be hung up in traffic like you are now. It's hard to predict how long it will take, especially in the mornings and afternoons. We're building a new transit station and bike station, bicycle repair station there. We're adding a mile of connectivity of bike and pedestrian trail as well to this project. And it preserves the rail corridor for future use. Should we get to a point where rail becomes something that can be funded and is reasonable to fund, it'll still be there. We're not taking anything away. Next slide. There's a picture of what that looks like. It's between the freeway and the bike trail, all next to the rail, and the rail line stays in place. We're taking very little rail. I'm not going to say we're not taking any rail out. We do cross the rail in a couple occasions, but nothing that will prohibit the rail from being used in the future. Next slide. So challenges and opportunities. We still are recovering as a community from COVID. We still don't have back to full employment in the hospitality, restaurant employees, ag fields. We have, we want to expand on this Better Bus Network. The only thing that's holding us back is the availability of people who are willing to be bus drivers. The federal government, we do receive $14-15 million a year from the federal government, but it requires Congress to be in session and pass a budget, which is increasingly difficult over the years. The zero emission bus regulations and getting a workforce who can work and operate zero emission buses. Land use decisions, how we build around our existing corridors of travel, and trying to stop sprawl outside of travel corridors is something that we need to focus on. And there's changing demographics in the region. Again, becoming increasingly gentrified. Areas in Seaside and areas of Salinas that used to be low-income households are now pretty high-income households. And so people who are are being forced out of low income areas, are being pushed out further and further out, it's harder and harder to reach them with our buses. SB 125 is some new funding that's coming towards our county, about $40 million, primarily intended for unfunded transit needs. We need to work with CAMC to make certain that you saw that big long list of projects that cost way more than $40 million. We want to make certain that money is appropriately spent where the legislature intended it to go. Next slide. If they answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Carl. I'll start first with Vice Mayor Shirley.
Thank you, Carl, for your presentation. I am grateful for MST because it saves me time because my daughter takes the bus on from PC. And on the day that she forgot her wallet, they texted me and said, "Oh my God, do they take Apple Pay?" I said, "Yep, go ahead." And it worked just fine.
That is great.
It was perfect. So the two ways that the Del Rio residents are accessing MST is obviously through the fixed routes, but then can you just expand a little bit on the rides?
So, yeah, and there's more than that. But wait, there's more. So fixed route is our primary service offering. MST rides is for people with severe disabilities that prevent them from riding the bus. That can be for a variety of reasons. It could be they just can't make the walk up a very steep hill. They may have, COPD or something like that. So we evaluate each person as they come to determine whether they can use fixed route transit or not. Now, we also offer taxi vouchers for seniors, veterans, and persons with disabilities can, for a $3 with a voucher, can pay $3 and get up to a $17 ride within the Monterey Peninsula area. Van pools are available as well. So there are those options as well.
And the rides pick them up at their,
Rides is a curb to curb service. Taxis can be door to door. With the MST navigators, if you decide that you need a navigator and we can get a volunteer to help you, we can take you door through door and actually come in and help you with your ride. If you allow it, we have volunteers who are willing to help you out all the way through.
great, thank you for the service.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And you had the presentation from 211, Katie. We worked very closely with them and they were critical during the floods and evacuations. We were coordinating with them, directing us. We were using everything from cabs, picking one person up out near the Salinas River to full-size buses, taking 20, 30 people out of Auburn. So it was a critical partnership. So it was great to see that. Great to see her here.
Go ahead, Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Sidorik. Thanks for bringing it to the rest of the council. If I'm not mistaken, this is the same presentation that myself and Vice Mayor Shirley had during our orientation. We're very similar. Yeah, we've updated it with the new updated customer comments, the market research. That's great. Well, I'm glad we all got an overview of it here at Council 11. I have to disagree with you just slightly on one point. Constructive disagreement, a complementary disagreement. You mentioned in the restructuring of your goal setting and your model, in transitioning to creating communities, connected communities, creating opportunity, being kind to the planet. Being kind to the planet. Yeah. I have to disagree. You've been doing it all along. We have absolutely this loosely. I've been a passenger my entire life. I was one of the fellows with no car. And I rode the #1 over from Pacific Grove, various connections. I made friends, became a greater member of my community. Through MST, it created an opportunity for me. I used it to go to job interviews, then to go to and from work. In my youth, my early 20s and whatnot, recreationally, the old 22 down to Big Sur when it was running. I'd like to see it running again. When you got the bike racks added to the bus, that expanded my horizons even more. If you figure out a way to put a lumber rack in place for my tools. That's a CHP issue. Okay, smart, I'm a frequent rider. But so again, you've been doing it all along, and I'm very pleased to see the advances that you're implementing now, and the future that Madam who's her name? Madam Transit, as we're told, with the zero emissions buses and progress on the Surfway route. And Again, just thank you for bringing it. Madam Transit followed me from Long Beach. I used to use that graphic, we stayed graphic for the Long Beach Transit about 30 years ago. So 25 years ago. That never seems to get old for me.
All right, Councilmember Uy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any question, but I'm really like very thankful of MSP. When I moved here, here in the Monterey County, before, I was an immigrant. And of course, I don't have really like a reliable car back then. But MSP was my reliable partner, to go everywhere here in the county, even to go to San Jose. If I need to go to the East Coast, I would take the MSP bus, to go and then go to the airport and then fly and then be back. So this is really like a very good resource that we have here in Monterey County, and I hope it stays.
Yeah, I don't think we're going anywhere. We're just looking to grow.
Yes.
As best we can to support the community.
Yes, yeah, so that's really like my wish, because there's gonna be a lot of immigrants that will be coming here as well in our community, and they will need this. As I have really like used this, I was a bus rider. Yeah, so thank you for your leadership in MSP.
Right.
Thank you, Carl, for the presentation. I personally have never used the bus system, but my family has, and they've always had great things to say about it. And I like the fact that you're researching where the people are coming from and where they're going to, so we can expand, or you guys can expand in the appropriate manner. I do have one, unfortunately, criticism for your organization. The bus drivers have always been courteous when they're driving. The little guys in the Priuses are not.
Oh.
They are not. I've been run off the road by one on a motorcycle. I was riding a motorcycle. And I had one blow completely through a blacked out intersection during the storms and almost took me out. So, and I did call both times. I did call the office or whatever, and I didn't seem like they cared much.
Oh, we care. I guarantee.
The person I was talking to did.
I look at every comment that comes through. I can tell you, I personally review. We don't get that many. We get about 30 comments a month, come in. And so that's enough for me to personally review everyone. And when I hear something like that, if it comes through, I personally investigate those types of comments.
But you guys did a great job overall, but I've had a couple of bad tastes in my mouth
Yeah,
there.
well,
The motorcycle when my daughter was on the back with me.
yeah, I'm sorry that happened.
Thank you very much.
All right, Carl, thanks.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. I just had one question. So the little bus that used to go through Del Rey Oaks no longer runs through it. Has the rides and the voucher van pool, has that kind of taken over that service?
Yes, and I believe we still have, I'm gonna have to check, I'll get back with you. I think we still have a route that runs through Del Rey Oaks on the residential streets, but I do know that we did, that was part of our reallocation. Where car ownership was high, near 100% car ownership, we moved buses to areas where car ownership was low. So I know we did reduce some of that, because I don't know that Del Rey Oaks doesn't have any at all. I'll have to check and see if there's more fixed route than just what runs along here on 218.
Yeah, it used to run down Portola, but I haven't seen it in a long time.
Right, I don't think we do.
Okay,
Yeah, I think that part of the route is no longer.
but for our residents, they're covered through the rides for and the vouchers and.
Correct, for elderly, folks with mobility limitations, disabilities, absolutely covered.
Okay, got it. I'll take it out to the public. If you have any questions, comments, now is your opportunity. Okay, seeing none. Carl, thanks again.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
All right. Okay, our next item is the consent agenda. Is there anyone among the council who would like to pull an item on consent? Okay, seeing none. Anyone from the public that would like to pull any of the consent items? Okay, seeing none, I'll accept the motion. Okay, second. Okay. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Move on to the next item is old business, which we have none. The next item is new business. We have one item, and that's to provide direction on the proposed comprehensive tobacco retailer license ordinance in establishing a smoke-free public place ordinance. So with that, I'll turn it over to the folks from Monterey County.
Good evening. Gonzalo Bernal from the Monterey County Health Department. Good evening, Mayor, Del Rio City Council members, staff, and residents. As I mentioned, I'm Gonzalo Bernal from the Health Department Tobacco Control Program. I'm here with a few partners and my supervisor, Michelle House, who oversees many programs, including the Tobacco Control Program and the Cannabis Education Program, in case some of you had questions regarding cannabis. And also Tanya Ruth from Blue Zones Project. The California Tobacco Control Program, which funds us, we provide technical assistance to any jurisdiction, including the county and any city in Monterey County on any tobacco-related ordinances, such as smoke-free housing in apartment complexes, smoke-free outdoor areas, and tobacco retailing licensing. And we're going to start off talking about the tobacco retail licensing.
I'd like to give us 1 second.
You've been hearing a lot of presentations today, so I want to go over that part of it.
Again, same thing, but not the presentation view, but I can see it. Can you flip to the next slide? I need to see section.
Yeah, trying to bring it up or waiting.
No, we're trying to close out what you have open.
Yeah.
So the next slides, we will go over that. Thank you again. So why tobacco? Tobacco continues to be the leading cause of death, preventable death in the United States. Tobacco kills more Americans every year than cocaine, heroin, alcohol, homicide, suicide, and AIDS combined. Also, tobacco use leads to substantial healthcare costs and lost productivity due to illness and premature death. These figures that you see here are from a study done by Dr. Wendy Max, who is a health economist at UC San Francisco. The total of $100 million is estimated to cost Monterey County. Next, these findings are from the California School Climate, Health, and Learning Surveys. Additionally, smoking rates have declined nationwide since the Surgeon General report in 1964. Unfortunately, the only increase we have seen that's happened in the last 2 years has been among youth and young adults, and we can attribute that to electronic smoking devices and also flavored tobacco products. Locally here, 2 decades worth of data shows that the overall illegal tobacco sales rate to youth in Monterey County was 26%. This is according to information from the California Department of Public Health through their Stop Tobacco Access to Kids Enforcement Unit, also known as the STAKE Act. So what we did there, they gave us 20 years worth of data, and they had like over 500 times they attempted to, they sent a youth to buy tobacco products, and 26% of the times they sold. So that is why we have that's impetus for the tobacco retail licensing program. Most smokers start before the age of 18. Yesterday I saw an ad, a research from the tobacco industry, where they focus on 18-year-olds, because if you can get somebody to smoke at 18, you probably gotta have them hooked. If you wait until they're 24, 25, when the brain is fully developed, the chances of a person picking up a substance like that and smoking continuously is really decreased. They figure only 5% of people start smoking after 24, so they want to get you early. It's also well known that people who smoke want to quit, but it's really hard because of the addictive nature of nicotine. This list here provides the city, the number of tobacco retailers licensed in parentheses, and the year that their ordinance of tobacco retail licensing was adopted. Monterey County was the first to adopt a tobacco retail licensing ordinance in 2012. It was modeled after Riverside County. We looked at their geographic, it's a very large geographic area. They have more cities than us, but it fit our needs. And what they did there is the county established a program, and then they invited all the cities to adopt a tobacco retail licensing program that the county would administer for the cities at no cost. The cost would be to the retailers. So far, we have over 300 tobacco retailers that are covered by this ordinance. And the county already has infrastructure in place. We have systems, we have environmental health program to administer the program on behalf of the city of Del Reyes. Well, so we don't go there and start, giving people tickets. We educate them about the laws regarding this. The Public Health Bureau administers a license application process. We have an environmental health program, the same folks that look at restaurants, and they inspect all tobacco retailers at least once a year. And they have been at 100%, they visit at least 100% of the stores once or twice a year. They've been doing that for the last 5-6 years. Floods or no floods, they find a way to get there. Also, the Environmental Health Bureau provides retailer education. A lot of times, a lot of these violations are minor and we correct them on site. They also conduct youth tobacco purchase surveys. We also have support from our county council, from our district attorney when necessary, and also our sheriff's office. The main components of a strong program is that there be a fee sufficient enough to pay for the cost of this, which is currently at $384 a year, paid by the retailer. It considers a violation of any local law, city law, state law, or federal law to be a violation of the ordinance. And there also has to be significant penalties, including fines, temporary suspensions, and up to the point of revocation of the license. There is public support for this. These findings are from a survey funded by the American Lung Association. You can see over 80% of California voters support tobacco retail licensing ordinances. The CDC has found that tobacco advertising encourages youth to smoke, and you see most advertising for tobacco products happens at the retail environment. The Sheriff's Department, they've done a youth tobacco purchase survey between 2019 and 2021, and their sales rate, illegal sales rate was 15, which is still should be 0, but it's much lower than the 26% from the state. We look forward to working with you on this, and that's one part of the presentation. Now I'm going to transition over to the secondhand smoke-free public places. Next. In California, well over 200 cities have adopted smoke-free outdoor area ordinances. A majority of voters, as you can see here, support tobacco and smoking regulations. Over 70% of California voters support comprehensive outdoor smoking. This next slide here is the American Lung Association report grade that they do annually. It will be published again in January. 10 years ago, it was F's all across in Monterey County. Since then, we're doing much better. One city has an A, and that is Pacific Grove, where they have adopted a policy on tobacco retail licensing on smoke-free outdoor areas. And also they have the only ordinance in the county that bans smoking in apartment complexes. There might be a designated smoking area, but you can't smoke in apartment complexes. Continuing, there are 7 Cs, 1 D, and 4 Fs. Next year, we project that there will be 1 more C and 1 less F, because the city of Marina recently adopted a tobacco retail licensing ordinance and also a pretty comprehensive outdoor smoking ordinance. So secondhand smoke, I don't know if I mentioned this at the beginning, but over 50,000 Americans are killed. People who do not smoke are killed by effects of secondhand smoke. 1 out of every 4 persons exposed to secondhand smoke have signs of coronary heart disease. As with many health concerns, the younger population, the less educated, and those from lower socioeconomic status, very similar to what we have heard from MST and from United Way, are more likely to be exposed to secondhand smoke and less likely to be covered by a law that protects it. Next slide. I'll leave this here. This is the smoking that can damage every part of the body. According to the Surgeon General, there is no risk-free level of secondhand smoke exposure. Even brief exposure can be harmful. As here you can see the cancers and the chronic diseases that can be caused by secondhand smoke. The goal of a smoke-free ordinance is to protect non-smokers from the harmful effects of secondhand smoke. Protect the environment, including Monterey Bay Sanctuary or ponds and other water resources from harmful chemicals included in tobacco products. An added benefit is this will protect our ecotourism that we have here, as well as reduce the risk of fire at home and in our beloved outdoor areas, and also reduce death and the disease associated with smoke. The ordinance, if adopted, would prohibit smoking in some of these places here. I'll call attention to outdoor dining. That is not covered by state law, so that would be one that would be covered by local jurisdictions. Next slide. It is not expected to be a burden on the police department or code enforcement. This is something where a comprehensive public education campaign by the city. I now know the name of the city newsletter, the Acorn. That would be a perfect place to put some information on this. You also have a web page, you have Facebook pages, I'm assuming, and there we can bring awareness. And it's about changing the social norms where people know, you know, there's kids playing in the basketball court, it's not cool to be smoking near them. The goal is to change social norms. Bottom line is nobody should be forced to be exposed to someone's secondhand smoke. So that concludes the presentation on both tobacco retail licensing and smoke-free. Thank you for your attention. Michelle and I are here if you have any questions.
All right, thank you. I'll start with Vice Mayor Schuler.
Thank you. I don't have any specific questions. I know we'll talk about each one of the ordinances, I think separately, but Gonzalo, I want to thank you for coming, and Michelle, thank you for coming tonight, and Tanya as well. I heard about these ordinances through Kendra Howell with Blue Zone Project. I ran into her at an event and she shared this with me and she said, oh, I'm going to introduce you to Gonzalo. And, you know, I've been teaching health at Monterey Peninsula College for 15 years. And so I've had hundreds of students talk to me about their smoking habits, how much they want to quit, how difficult it is to quit. I talk about from birth to death, all kinds of illnesses, and smoking weaves its way through all of them and can be connected to all of those leading causes of death. One of the statistics is that you have someone dying from a smoking related disease every 66 seconds. And I try to get this across to students that like that would be like at least 3 747s full of people crashing every day. We would want to do something about that. And so, I'm really grateful that we are talking about this. I think this is really important for Del Rey Oaks. I'd like to see us get a better grade than an F. I think it's very applicable here, and I'm really interested in digging into each one of the ordinances to talk more about it. But again, just thank you for being here.
And we can go ahead and do that right now if you'd like. Go ahead and go right in.
Yeah, great. And I also want to acknowledge Councilmember Halleck too. Thank you very much. You reached out to me and talked about wanting to bring this forward. So I want to really thank you for that. I appreciate your interest in this too. So we've got the tobacco retail license, in our packet. Part of that is a pharmacy removing, I'm thinking about the pharmacy portion of that. I know Marina just passed that portion. I did go talk to Safeway this week. I don't think they would be interested in stopping selling tobacco, unfortunately, even though they are a pharmacy. So I think that portion of the ordinance would probably need to be removed in terms of the tobacco retail license. In terms of the smoke-free public place, just in terms of outdoor dining, I also talked to Safeway about their tables out in front. They already don't allow smoking at those tables. We see smokers out there all the time. they don't have any signage, and so that's what I'm really happy about this ordinance, because we could really ask them to talk to, you know, their corporation to really get some signage out there, because so that'll help them. They were very happy to hear that we were talking about this. I also went to Tarpey's, and Tarpey says, oh no, we don't let people smoke out on our patio. And so they are honestly, you know, on board with that. So those are our two outdoor dining areas. In terms of sidewalks, I know sidewalks is also listed on there. We don't really have sidewalks in Delray Oaks. I'm thinking that might be something we just wanna take off of that. I think we need to be really clear about the violations and penalties, the chapters that were referred to in the ordinance, I think needs to be outlined. Because it looked like one of them was leading me to like elections violations or something, so we just, Alex, you're in charge of that. I did have a question about, so there's service areas that are private, and then service lines, smoke-free lines. So like, for instance, like the ATM at Wells Fargo, so we don't own that property, but would our ordinance apply to that area, even though it's private?
Yes, if you choose to do so, you know, the good thing about these ordinances is that you can customize them, put things in, put things out, it depends on what fits for your community.
Yeah. So,
Another example of the service line would be a food truck
right,
that, you know, the people cooking inside really don't want people outside to be smoking. And they are the ones that proactively put those signs up there. That's an example of something you can codify.
right. I like the idea that we start to have signs in our parks as well, and, you know, obviously with Ford tag coming through, we wanna make sure that no one's smoking on the bike trail as well. I think we should also have a discussion about the multi-unit residence. You know, the way it's written, my understanding is that it wouldn't apply to our condominiums or the Oaks, but and I think if you only have one multi-unit place, right, on Portola.
We have one, yeah.
Yeah, so that should be a discussion that we have. You know, maybe now is the time to implement this before we actually build out and have more, you know, any apartments or things like that. So I'm interested to hear what my fellow council members have to say about that.
Okay, anything else?
For now, that's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councilmember Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I too, I'm very happy to have worked with Vice Mayor Shirley on this very important, what I view as very important ordinance in improving the overall health of each and every community member currently and to come, and just our environment overall. I find the draft ordinances to be completely consistent with Monterey County regulations as written, and also with the Blue Zone project intentions as I understand them. They're beautiful. I've just now had the pleasure of meeting Ms. Bruce, and I look forward to discussing more of the Blue Zone project aspects with her, which is multifaceted. For those that don't know anything about it, I'm learning more and more every day, but I've already got a few other things in the works to kind of get closer to that intention and make the city a little bluer. Very suspenseful, I know, I'm not gonna reveal anything right away, but we're working on it. Otherwise, I would very much just echo, of course, Vice Mayor Shirley and I have worked back and forth pretty closely and are in agreement with custom tailoring the ordinance to our city specifically. As she mentioned, we have very few interspersed sidewalks. So I don't think that would be a level of enforcement that would be appropriate for our city. The multi-unit residence, again, I would concur, and the condominiums, the Oaks, are a bit autonomous in many ways and already have a policy established there. It's on your patio only, and for the record, I strongly disagree because they're in close proximity and leveled closely together, so I'm not sure how effective that would be. We have 2 tobacco retailers in the city, 7-Eleven and Safeway. 7-Eleven, I'm sure these regulations will be enforced through the county with no conflicts. Safeway being or having a pharmacy within, I agree, I think we should leave that alone. They're primarily, I mean, the language in the ordinance does say despite other retail goods and such that are distributed or sold. So we may have to do some edits there, but pharmacy is probably about 2 or 3% of their overall business there, and they're great to have here in the city. So I think we should amend that aspect of the ordinances slightly. Also, I'd just like to mention that overall, we have the good fortune of, I think, living in a fairly healthy environment. I'm out and about consistently. I'm in our park daily. I don't see a large amount of open air smoking of any kind. Occasionally I come across a litter bug cigarette, but that gets under my skin, I pick it up. But there's not a huge problem now, but I think greater deterrence signage, the fact that we have this ordinance will be even more so. My primary concern, really no less than the others, but first and foremost is the influence that this could have on children. Just visually, the sensation of smell, just seeing any way that the children, the example you gave, they're on the playground, recreating the basketball court or whatnot, seeing someone walking by, smoking. That's what I fear most, is them being negatively impacted and negatively influenced and, maybe not even conscious of it, but somehow influenced to where they could unknowingly be more prone to smoke later in life and then have to endure all of the health risks that you've outlined. And also, as stated, we can all agree, we all have a right to a free and a clean atmosphere and environment free of secondhand smoke. And it affects everyone, not just the children, not just those that are maybe that have respiratory complications. Truth be told, I have known Gonzalo for some time. We have a friend that had a friend, a mutual friend, never smoked a day in his life, all-star athlete, died of lung cancer within the last couple of years. So it is an insidious foe, smoking, and I'm just glad to see that we are putting this forward. So kind of springboard off that again, we may not have an immediate need to answer to any immediate problem, but we can pave the way towards prevention. And where sidewalks are concerned, multi-unit residences, additional pharmacies, with this as a basis implemented now, we're at least setting a good solid foundation that can later be amended and tailored to the needs of the city as we expand. So I'm in agreement and full support of both ordinances as drafted.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Uli.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Gonzalo, thank you for the presentation, and I just have a question, because you mentioned that there are some jurisdictions never adopted this kind of ordinance, and I would just like to know what are their concerns why they didn't want to adopt certain ordinances that we want to.
Locally, I don't think it's because they don't want to. I think we have floods, we have staffing issues, we have concerns. You're all busy. You got a lot of stuff. That's what I went across more than anything. It's not because we don't want to protect our youth. It's just getting it on the agenda. Having the city council members, actually, really get in there and really read the whole draft, that takes effort on everybody's part. So it's more of the time, lack of resources, but not because of that.
When Councilmember Shirley brought this to me, I talked to a couple local city managers and one of them who passed it fairly recently, mentioned that they had it on their to-do list from their council for a long, I agreed to classify it as a long time, not for the time limit, because it was a long time. But it was because of staffing and other priorities and just pecking order and when you get to things. So I don't think it was a lack of desire, it was just, we all have a lot to accomplish.
Okay, thank you for that enlightenment, because I was just like thinking of what other ramifications that we have to be considering, because we just, I don't know what I don't know. So that's why if, as much as possible, we can really look at all of the angles and how our city would get affected with this ordinance, it would be really greatly appreciated. Yeah, so.
I think what I'd like to say on that is I've been doing this for like 15 years now, and I get to know a little bit of the communities, and I think in this situation, it's more along what Mr. Howard said, it's about this, we put it on the books now, before there's apartment complexes come up, before other, we create more parks, more rec trails. That's the way my personal observation of this would be. There's some other areas where secondhand smoke is a big problem. Living in apartment complexes, that is hard. So I think you're in a different situation.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Bill.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. As a former smoker, I can attest that it is very difficult to quit because you can walk down any street almost anywhere and smoke a cigarette. Any other advice you may have, you can't just walk. When you got a shot, but you can bum a cigarette almost anywhere. And a smoker, because I smoked for 25 years, a smoker will give everything but his last cigarette to another smoker. You can second last, but not the last. One question I did have, somebody mentioned that we have 2 read numbers. The car wash doesn't sell any products. Smokeless tobacco, any of those things?
Not that I'm aware of, but I don't know,
I haven't been there in ages, so I need to just throw it out there, just make sure. And then the comment on the sidewalks, it would be nice to include something about just wandering down the street, because I get people walking up and down my street, right in front of my house, I don't have a sidewalk, but they could be smoking, and so I don't know if that can be, just leave it alone and just, I'm not sure how to phrase it. But, we don't have a lot of sidewalks, but I don't really want everybody walking down the street smoking. So I don't know how we could incorporate that. The Oaks is the Oaks, I don't know, I think we should kind of leave that alone, like you were saying, Jeremy, or Councilor Howell, and Safeway as well. I mean, they do have the pharmacy over there, I use it regularly, unfortunately. But I'm in total support of doing all of this. I think it's reasonable. It certainly paves the way for future ordinances as we need them, and it would obviously raise our grade a bit. And nobody likes it, sorry. But yeah, I'm in total support of all this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I completely understand the want to make uniform standards across the county. Making sure that cities also have rules on the books that are consistent with what's going on in the county. You mentioned the license fee is $384 a year.
Yes,
That's paid at the county.
yes.
How much of that money comes back to us? Okay, and why is that? Because we're gonna be spending, just as you do, that money to enforce standards. We'll be
doing the enforcement. I'm sorry if I was not clear on that.
Okay, and I understand that for the licensing, but you won't be enforcing it when something happens within our city where a police officer is told, hey, someone's violating the non-smoking rules. That'll be our police that does that.
Yes.
So why is it that the cities aren't included in given a portion of that funding to do enforcement actions like that?
Well, regarding, there's an old, the city attorney might be versed on this, there's a Prop 29, not a recent Prop 29, another Prop 29, that means that any money that received for this thing, it's a fee, it's a license, and only, that money can only be used for the tobacco retail licensing. And it can't be used for, well, we're gonna use a little bit for this and a little bit for that.
It covers, so if you're a retailer, you're gonna pay that amount to the county. And then the county they collect it, and then the Environmental Health Bureau and work with sheriff and us to make sure and ensure that the tobacco retailer is following the letter of the law, both for federal, state, and local. And so that includes STING. So we have the youth come in, we have yearly visits to the retailers, and we do the education and the enforcement. The piece, I think what I'm hearing you say is, now, if we were to have an outdoor smoking ordinance or something else, that's separate. So the TRL fee covers tobacco retail licensing. That's a separate fee just for that purpose. And then there are other, like if you had smoke-free housing and other things, that fee can't be used for that because it's for the tobacco retail license.
It's also, it's another way of presenting this, and thank you for the question, is protecting the retailer. Here's a retailer that's working hard to have his business up. He's willing to pay for the license, but it has to be for what is, it's mentioned in the license ordinance, not for secondhand smoke complaints. He didn't pay for that. He's just paying for the service to be under compliance for tobacco related laws.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, that fee is only for license
Yes.
enforcement.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, got it. I agree with my fellow council members about the pharmacy, removing the pharmacy from the ordinance, as well as the sidewalk issue. Also checking with the car wash to see if they sell any products. They will have to verify that. I had a question about within the ordinance, in paragraph 050, it talks about events that may occur, event organizers and events where they have to put 5 no smoking signs at the entrance of each event. I'm not sure if that would apply in our city, realizing that, you know, all we have is the park that could potentially host events like that. So I'm not sure if that's specific to that type of scenario. But I don't know if that particular part of the ordinance would necessarily need to be in there. Yeah,
I mean, there may be some time where there's other events, you know, in other places in the city, like, you know, News Lodge or, you know, out in the parking lot or other places. You know, if we have an event in the park, we're already gonna have signage in the park, so we're covered there already, so we wouldn't need any additional signage. So I just feel like you never know if there's an event, let's make sure it's smoke free.
yeah, and I guess the part specifically in there where it says at least 5 non-smoking signs, is that just arbitrary, the 5 signs, or is 1 sign sufficient, is my point. So if there's an event going on, do you need 5 signs plastered around that event, or will 1 at the entrance do the trick? So I'm just thinking that might be something we can take a look at.
If I may, Mr. Mayor. As we have with other proposed ordinances, this one was loosely borrowed from a neighboring city. That is larger in area and population, and maybe has a few more of such events going on. And so that could perhaps be one of the custom tailored items in the ordinance, more relative to the size of the events that we have now. And we're talking a lot about, what we have now and what may be at some point, and trying to foresee some preparation there. And we'll all agree that, that amendments can be brought to this ordinance. Depending on the scheduling, the immediacy of an event, what is that going to entail? This council reconvening, a first reading, a second reading, so we're gonna have to really anticipate these things, whether it be development of, multi-unit residence or construction of sidewalks. We're gonna have to get out really far ahead of this, so I'm wondering, I'm trying to see a balance between what we have in the ordinance now that works for what we have, but doesn't overstep unnecessarily, and, so that's what I'm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree, we need to do that. I was just looking at it from the standpoint of, is it just an arbitrary number, or is it something that, you know, we can take a closer look at and say, this is sufficient? That's the only thing. If, you know, if 5 is the number, I'm completely okay with that. That was the only point that I wanted to make with that one. And then my last point is, I think it's somewhat consistent with what I'm hearing, but I think the Oaks and the other multi-unit building that we have, I think it's prudent that we ask the Oaks, realizing that they have their own housing, their own CCNRs and their own rules, that, you know, they be allowed to police their jurisdiction and set rules the way that they want to. So I think it's important that we allow the Oaks to maintain, adopt, enforce their smoking standards as it applies to them. Same with the multi housing unit that we have on Portola. So those were my comments. Is there any further discussion?
So just clarification, because my understanding is that this wouldn't apply to the Oaks. And that the one multi-unit housing we have, I suppose if we leave in the multi-unit housing, that it would apply to them.
I don't know how if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know how that duplex or that there are 2 units in that. Three, right? I think there's back, side one also, but would that not fall under property owners? Rules and regulations that are owned by one person? They may have a no smoking policy for, are we considering that? Not really one residence, I suppose. Is it 3 separate residences? It is one structure on one parcel. That's a tough one. We're kind of splitting hairs there.
To the mayor.
Yeah.
Can I ask Gonzalo, like, what, you know, when you have that in an ordinance, how does that apply?
I'm gonna try to address the CCR of the condos. It gets a little bit more complicated, obviously. Regarding when this is applicable, I've seen some cities, mostly they go with duplexes or larger. You could go 4plex and larger, but I'm not familiar with your housing stock here. And I'm also not sure what your future housing stock is gonna look like, let's say 10 years out. So I really don't know what your plans are there, so.
I think if I may also, the Oaks is privately owned, so I own my apartment, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of a different, and I think again, like you said, they have probably CCRs, and it sounds like you already know how that works. And it's probably quite disturbing for the person next door who do not like smoke, but that's a separate animal. So with regards to the multi-unit housing complex, most places go duplex and above. And it sounds like you only have one complex at this time. I think it might be interesting to ask that property owner or manager what their thoughts are. They may already have existing something when they sign their lease, a lease addendum that says no pets, no smoking. I don't know that. But if they already have a lease addendum, they probably would be supportive of you passing that, because that's one more way to kind of say, I say it, they say it, itself. And so you might want to ask that prior, and then I think it's also very, as I'm hearing, very proactive, because I'm under the impression you will be doing some building. And as you do that building, it will protect you as you're going in. And I will throw a statistic out to say that please keep in mind that within California, 11% of the population smokes, the rest do not. And please keep in mind who actually lives in a multi-unit housing complex. So for an opinion, I will say it is equitable to be able to provide low-income housing to individuals who cannot necessarily make their own rules and regs because it's not their home, but most do not smoke in California. So you would be protecting those who do not. And then it would allow for, in most places, they will have a smoking area. So for example, as you said, the patio, which can be annoying, but it can be on a complex. They'll say, okay, we'd like you to be kind of over here away from where the kid play area is, or the swimming pool, or where most of the people are hanging out. And you can smoke, and it also keeps the kids from seeing, and as you said, protecting you, because what we're trying to do is equity, and we're also trying to protect our young people from starting and seeing and what is normal. So what we're trying to say is smoking is not normal. So that's just some ideas.
Okay,
So just a couple of questions really quick. I think I see where you're talking about where you, in a condominium, you own your condo and there are rules that affect the common areas. That seems to make a lot of sense to me. The place on Portola, is it a triplex? Is that the one I'm referring to? So one option would be obviously, enforce it from triplex and up, or duplex and up, if we're concerned about that, maybe skirting around the edge of it. One thing that kind of popped into my head, and maybe I'm just totally overreaching here, as we talk about smoking in areas, what about the most? What? They allow smoking, I believe they allow smoking around the pool area and places like that. Does this affect any of that? As far as public smoking?
If it's, if anybody
It's
from the
not
public.
public, it's a private.
It's
If it's private,
Private club.
Then it doesn't impact that. Okay.
Does state or county law come into play there with the standard
Only for-
25 feet from any public
Yes,
entrance?
so obviously smoke-free workplace within, right? So always covered within. And if it's not a federal or state building, the 20, normally federal, state, city, right, 20 to 25 feet, depending on what's happening from windows and where the intake and all of that is. But I think in this case, this is private. The lodge is
I'm just
private.
making sure we're not, somebody doesn't get blindsided by this thing as we're moving forward. And then the last question, and I think I already know my answer, is that whatever ordinance that the city sets, private residents, private business can always exceed, go beyond, make it a stronger, more restrictive ordinance. They can't back it up the other way.
Correct. And this would not affect a home. So if we do multi-unit housing complex, the idea is we're stacking people, right? So the idea is what you're doing next door to me does affect me, but in your home, there's probably enough, space. And I can't, like we said, for the condominium complex, I'm privately owned. And that's between you and I, right? So if you're my neighbor and you're smoking, I can say, hey, can you go over here? Because it's actually coming near my pool or whatever.
Great, thank you very much. That's all I have.
any other discussion?
Can I offer 2 points that came up in the discussion I'd like to just share some ideas on? City Council Member Rafael Cronin mentioned about, the person that insists on, I'm just making this up theoretically here, the person outside and insists on smoking outside of your house when your window's open. Maybe there's something where it can be put in under the definitions under nuisance. You have a nuisance ordinance, I'm sure, maybe make sure that smoking is included in there in case that person just insists on, I'm gonna smoke outside of this window because I want to upset them. That way, at least the police can at least go after complaints and say, okay, this is ridiculous. The other is the pharmacy at Safeway, and this happened in, an exception can be made like this. Let's say you only wanted the Safeway, the only pharmacy you wanted to sell cigarettes in Delray Oaks is the Safeway. you can write it in there, say, no pharmacies can sell except for at the address where the Safeway is. That way, if somebody new comes in, they're not allowed to, and that protects Safeway, who's been invested in the community for a long time. These are 2 thoughts, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, my thoughts on the multi-family properties that we have. I think we will have to make it triplex or fourplex or higher, because then we potentially get into ADUs on the property. I know there are a couple properties that have been transformed into duplexes, and I think that would get a little bit difficult. And I understand Councilmember Halleck's thought process about, you know, we're looking as the city expands this ordinance, being able to stand the test of time. And maybe have something in there for a larger complex, but my thought would be definitely triplex, fourplex, or higher, because of those concerns that we will always have within the city of folks turning their house into a duplex or adding an ADU on it. So those are my thoughts. Any comments from the public? Questions or comments?
I'd like to make a comment.
Sure, you can come up if you'd like.
Is that preferred? I can project. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tanya Rose. I'm the community program manager with the Blue Zones Project, Monterey County. It's wonderful to be here to support our partners with the Monterey County Health Department. We've worked together on a few of these things, so it's wonderful to hear your leadership this evening and your thoughtful consideration. Certainly as the great city of Delray Oaks continues to forward think, really setting a precedent now and a commitment to health equity around some of these tobacco issues and ordinances, I think is critical. So I applaud you for that. Truly is a health equity issue here, right? We're talking about our young people and we're talking about our marginalized and vulnerable populations who can't, oftentimes make decisions. So applauding that great work. Certainly we want to get Blue Zones Project is all about community health and well-being. So getting folks outside, active, enjoying our parks and open spaces is critical. So this, the outdoor spaces ordinance, I think is really important. We're partnering with the city of Marina, who just recently passed this ordinance to develop a youth-led community education campaign. So youth in the community are designing signage that's going to be going into parks as a way to not be like, don't do this, but really to celebrate the good work of the city and to share the wonderful commitment of the council and leadership to creating clean air for all. So that's something that, we'd be happy to lend our support with. Additionally, signage is something that the Blue Zones Project can certainly help with as well. Anything like that, but we're excited to support you all in this process. You've got experts in the biz here to help, but we're here as well to support and looking forward to just future conversation and partnership and making Delray Oaks a little bit more blue and smoke-free. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, for your input. And I think we have provided a lot of information and guidance and direction so that we can move forward with this at our next meeting. Okay, so I'll move on to the next item. Sure.
Just wanna clarify, so maybe not the next meeting, Alex and I need to get together, and it sounds like we have a lot of partners to talk with. So thank you, Gonzalo and Michelle, really appreciate it.
And please feel free to reach out to us again, and we can come back and be your sounding board and question and answer people. So when you're ready and you'd like us to come back, please let us know. And in the meantime, if you need to email, call us, please do so.
Right, thank you. Yeah, we'll definitely be reaching out and talking about some best practices, especially as we contemplate our development for the future. We want to put things in place. Since we haven't really come to any conclusions on what we're going to be doing out there, there's a lot of possibilities, and I think telegraphing the desires of the community and the desires of the council to any future developers will help them formulate their ideas on what they're gonna do out there, so, we'll want to talk with all of them about best practices. And I think I just heard a good opportunity to talk to Lane and, Mayor Delgado about partnering and getting some good artwork for some of our signs. Next council meeting may be, a big lift for us, so maybe December.
Yeah, I should have said future, future.
So I got really nervous.
Okay, any other comments? All right.
You guys have great questions.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is staff report, city manager.
Yeah, just real quick, I don't know who's listening, who's going to be impacted by this, but if anybody's watching later on, streaming, just real quick, people who are paying attention to the tag. We're going to be having work starting next Monday. We're gonna be doing utility relocation. PG&E and their people, Callahan, they're gonna be doing utility relocation across the highway in the Carlton area, and into our public works yard. That's gonna necessitate lane closures on Canyon Del Rey. Most of the work is gonna be done at night, so the lane closures will be from 7 PM until 4 AM. So really shouldn't impact anybody in commute time or anything. But stay tuned, we'll be posting updates on the website, and Nancy has them on the website as well. Thank you.
Okay, council reports, all correspondence are in the packet, and our next meeting is November 14th at 6 PM.
There's a.
Yes, sir.